If I had done what Congressman Wiener had done, I'd be worried about my family and getting my life back together and not trying to go out and be a congressman and try to profess to be a leader of this country. I think that I would have taken different steps. I would have stepped down and done what's best for the people that I love.
Republican presidential candidate and former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum weighing in with his thoughts on the Anthony Weiner scandal. As an ostentatiously upstanding family values guy, Mr. Santorum says the right thing to do, the moral, family-loving thing to do, what he would do if he'd been caught sending dirty pictures to ladies on the interwebs, would be to step down, would be to resign from Congress.
I'd be worried about my family. I would have taken different steps. I would have stepped down and done what's best for the people that I love.
So based on his superior family values and love of his family, Mr. Santorum would have handled this whole thing quite differently if this had been his sex scandal. Turns out this is less hypothetical than you think. This is sort of an empirical question as to what Rick Santorum would do in this situation. Rick Santorum does not have an internet sex scandal of his own, but he was involved in a sex scandal. He was very deeply involved in someone else's sex scandal. In fact, it was because he was known as an ostentatiously pious family values guy that he got caught up in his friend John Enson's sex scandal. John Ensign, you'll remember, is the now former Nevada senator who was schnooping one of his staffers, his wife's best friend, who was married to another one of his staffers. Senator Ensign ultimately saw fit to fire the woman he was sleeping with from his staff and to fire her husband from his staff and to have his parents pay them $96,000 and to set the husband up in a lobbying job in apparent violation of ethics rules. On June 15th, 2009, Doug Hampton, the husband of the woman Senator Ensign had been schnooping, Doug Hampton sent this email to the senator's friend, Rick Santorum. Said, quote, "I am reaching out to you because I would like your help. I do know about you and your relationship with John Ensign. I'm also aware of the man you profess to be and the positions you have taken publicly with regards to family, integrity, and ethics. I am sending this note along to you because of your affiliation with Fox News and what I have put in motion with the letter I have sent Megyn Kelly and Fox News. I have tried for 1 year with John and others to resolve an unbelievable set of actions that John initiated and perpetuated, bringing great destruction to me and my family." Doug Hampton attached to that email to Rick Santorum the letter he had sent to Fox News host Megyn Kelly, and that told the story of Senator Ensign's pursuit of and affair with Doug's wife, and of Senator Ensign firing both Doug and his wife. So what do you think Rick Santorum did with this information? I mean, what would be the family values thing to do in this situation? Apparently, if you're Rick Santorum, it's to tip off your pal who has this sex scandal, to let him know that he's about to be exposed. Rick Santorum got that email from Doug Hampton on June 15th. The very next day, June 16th, Senator Ensign called a press conference and admitted to the affair, not to all the other stuff, just the affair, and he said he would not be stepping down. That timing, that 1 day between the email and the press conference, had long caused Doug Hampton to speculate that maybe Rick Santorum had been the source of the tip-off to Ensign, that this was all about to come out. Indeed, Doug Hampton's suspicions were confirmed by an exhaustive and damning report released last month by the Ethics Committee. Listen to this, quote, "On June 15, 2009, Mr. Hampton forwarded a copy of the letter he had written to Fox News in an email to former Senator Rick Santorum. He asked Senator Santorum for help with the matter. Senator Santorum, get this, Senator Santorum forwarded Mr. Hampton's email and the letter to Senator Ensign at his Gmail address that evening at approximately 10:20 p.m.
I'd be worried about my family. I would have taken different steps. I would have stepped down and done what's best for the people that I love.
According to Rick Santorum's ostentatiously superior and pious family values, for which you, of course, should elect him president so he can protect the country from your comparably bad family values. According to Rick Santorum, when faced with a Democratic sex scandal, the obvious moral solution is immediate shameful resignation for your family's sake. But when faced with a Republican sex and lobbying and cover-up and payoff and abuse of power and harassment scandal, the solution is a swift and quiet tip-off to let the bad guy get ahead of any bad press, to let the bad guy contain the scandal for a while anyway, and let him refuse steadfastly to resign for years until he was about to be thrown out of office. Rick Santorum never called for John Ensign to resign. For what it's worth, he also never called for David Vitter to resign. But Anthony Weiner must resign. So we can surmise that presidential candidate Rick Santorum's guide to sex scandal etiquette appears to be one sentence long. It's okay if you are a Republican. Amen. Joining us now is Chris Hayes, Washington editor of The Nation magazine and an MSNBC contributor. Chris, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you too, Rachel.
Can you run as the family values guy for president after you tipped off John Ensign to help him get ahead of the press on his sex scandal?
Yes, because I think you're overlooking one of the canonical family values, as found in Leviticus, is that bros shall look out for fellow bros. This is something that gets overlooked a lot, but it's in there somewhere that you gotta look out for your homie when he's admired in a scandal. No, look, it's obviously preposterous. I mean, I think that I generally think that there's no principle here, and this is just like rank opportunism, and Santorum is a preposterous marginal candidate, and he's trying to get his name in the headlines. But I also think that what rankles about this is it reminds me a lot of the Clinton years also, which is that the kind of cheapest way to score a family values point, right? The most kind of cost-free way of doing it is just to parachute in with some censorious statement about someone else's problems. I mean, it doesn't cost anything. You don't actually have to do anything. When you are faced with tough moral choices, that is where these sorts of values that you profess actually come to bear. The easiest thing in the world is to look at this sort of awful situation that's developing and score a cheap point. And I think that's what's so sort of maddening about that statement.
See, I feel like I understand why Republicans are calling for Anthony Weiner's resignation while David Vitter and John Ensign get to say. I mean, I think it's, as you say, it's just opportunism. It's just hypocrisy. What is going on with the, 9 or 10 Democrats now who are also calling on Anthony Weiner to resign? They don't have the same David Vitter shouldn't go problem, but they're all calling for Weiner to go.
I think it's two things. I think one is that Anthony Weiner is not the most popular member of the Democratic caucus amongst his colleagues. He is obviously highly visible, very brash, extremely ambitious. Everyone knows this. He's not the kind of person who has a ton of sort of close relationships, I think, on the Hill. And so I think that's part of it. The other part is that I think it's just this calculation of either this should end or he should shut up or we should just move on. I think the impulse is to stop talking about Anthony Weiner, which I think is an impulse that, Lord, I share, and I hope most of the country does at this point, that just cut it off at the pass and maybe then we'll move on to something else.
Well, what explains the media blitz over Anthony Weiner that will not stop? I mean, we have, again, this is an empirical question. We have a source of comparison. Comparatively, nothing about John Ensign and even David Vitter. Those scandals, as salacious as they were and much more complicated, interesting, salacious, evil, arguably, than this, got almost nothing. But the Anthony Weiner saga will not end.
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot over this past week, and I think there's a few things. One is that I think there's just a titillation factor, right? These photos are out there, we see the photos, and there's some photo that Andrew Breitbart is withholding, and then it gets circulated around. There's just this sort of really gross kind of feeding frenzy over the raw titillation of the thing. And then I also think there's kind of a profound level at which both the political observers, the media, and the country at large doesn't have any kind of set canonical list of what sort of overstepping of boundaries brings what sanctions. And so it's easy to kind of obsess over this because no one can read in the law book, oh, you did this and now this is the result.
I don't know. The whole hookers thing with David Vitter?
I know. The Vitter thing. But let me just say one more thing, and quickly, is that the lesson of Vitter and the lesson of Donald Rumsfeld Abu Ghraib is that if you just don't resign, it goes away.
That's true.
That's the lesson. Just don't resign, it goes away.
Scandals of all kinds. Scandals
absolutely.
Scandals of all
kinds.
That
is the lesson.
Chris Hayes, Washington editor of The Nation magazine and MSNBC contributor. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
Best new thing in the world today, still to come. And a Florida car dealership teaches the single scariest story in all of today's election news. It is definitely not about Anthony Weiner. It is not about Iowa. It is not about New Hampshire. It is not about, it's about a Hyundai dealership in Florida. But it is an incredible story, and that's next.